Yay.
Yay. Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back to the last and final round of our latest
of our last Darmstadt event.
Yes.
This is Marcus on the left, playing Aminatou Reanimator.
Yes. And Valentin
against...
on the right side with Stickfingers.
Yeah. So, Marcus and I, we were both playing Reanimator. We played in the Swiss, and I won that match. And then we played in the top 8, and I lost that match. So now he moved on to the final. I played the Stickfingers deck. I drew with the Stickfingers deck, and then we played for fun. And he played. He had very good hands, and he beat me very easily.
Happens when you have good hands with Stickfingers.
Yeah, which led to it actually led to me sideboarding a Cling to Dust, which I hadn't done for this event, for the next event that I played, which has turned out to be like the second best card on the deck, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the Aminatou deck puts a lot of cards in its graveyard. It can really benefit from like actual card advantage, which a Cling to Dust from the graveyard is, because you have these draw discard spells that sometimes you don't want to cast them because you want to keep like a counter spell or a removal spell or something in your hand, and going up a card, casting Cling from your graveyard really helps with that.
Yeah.
It also kind of gives in the control matchup, it's a very low risk thing to do.
And it also gives you some resilience against red deck wins and aggressive matchup.
Exactly. It's good against aggressive matchups, and it also you fuel your graveyard so hard that it's very easy to cast it to flash it back twice or 3 times in a game, and that kind of card advantage kind of can swing the game in your favor against a control opponent.
If you have enough mana, you could even, like, if it's necessary, because currently there is a lot of graveyard interacting decks in the format. There are a lot of these decks in the format. And if you have a lot of mana, and sometimes Aminatou does in the grindy matchups, you could even put it in your graveyard with Unmarked Grave.
Yep. With Unmarked Grave, you're probably, if you're getting something to generate card advantage from your graveyard, it's probably going to be the reanimation spell with Escape.
Okay, right. From the Catacombs, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I also didn't have in my deck at this tournament, but added afterwards.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's quite a good card, I think.
Yeah, so this is a brutal take with that collective brutality, not being able to put the Gristlebrand in the graveyard and filter some of those lands away.
So but there is a Teferi, and that's...
There is a Teferi, which if the Stickfingers opponent manages to get the mana and the reanimation spell line in play before Marcus untaps with the Teferi,
there's not much to do, but I'm coming from a different aspect, which is sometimes, or more often than not, you play 3 instant speed reanimation spells in Stickfingers, and sometimes you have a sequence against these decks to either have Veil of Summer plus your reanimation spell in order to protect it from counter magic, or you have a sorcery speed reanimation and an instant speed reanimation whenever your opponent is reacting, either by interacting with your graveyard or countering the spell. And Teferi shuts that down.
Not upticking Teferi here.
Not down-ticking.
Not down-ticking.
Yeah.
Seems like a weird play to me, considering Stickfingers is never pressuring.
But I think Teferi. At that point, he wasn't really aware of the matchup. Prior to Valentin bringing it up here in Darmstadt. I mean, we've seen the lists online, but no one has played it so far in Germany.
Yeah.
So there might have not been this awareness that, hey, there are a couple of permanents only on the board to bounce back. On the other hand, Trazen is already in the graveyard, so that's Stickfingers for X equals 2. And if that would have not been the case, but Marcus had that information, then he could have also played some enchantment, City of Solitude, something that boosts him, squandered resources whatsoever. That would have been worth it to bounce next turn, so that's not totally wrong to do it that way. Because Valentin can also decide to not play Stickfingers and develop the board a bit further, which is at that point the Teferi is not ticked down a bad opinion, so instead he decided to go for the Stickfingers cast, I guess. And yeah, that's the best weapon to beat Trazen, is to just steal it from your opponent. You do not get the activated abilities, that would be great, but
Notably, if it was a necrotic ooze, he would have, and he found a way to discard the Gristlebrand, he could have cast the Gristlebrand. He could have activated the Gristlebrand if it was a necrotic ooze, not a
that's
Trazen.
correct. This can become a grindy matchup real quick. So there's a Tomb of Fortress on board. That might have been the thought behind. Play Stickfingers on turn 4 and then simply reanimate it with the Tomb. But as
He has a
see,
Goryo's Vengeance in hand as well.
yeah, that's true.
Uh,
Yeah, I cut it the card for the Prague event because I felt it was way too clunky, because most often you want and you need to go off in the same turn, unless you play against decks that are very limited in terms of graveyard hate, something like Red Deck Wins or some other decks like this.
no, and
So
I imagine getting to that much is very, very difficult.
it's almost impossible, even with the lake lines and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you really have to have it all Cabal Ritual and Dark Ritual and whatsoever. But on the other hand, it's a nice tool against control. If you have information of your opponent's hand, you can cast Stickfingers. Most often they cannot interact with the trigger. And next turn you have another uncounterable reanimation effect. The reason you should only do that with information about your opponent's hand is otherwise they could interact in any way. Something like Cling to Dust or whatever.
Yep.
And as I said in the beginning, there are more and more graveyard-based decks. There's Dihada with Breach combo included. There's Aminatou, there's Stickfingers. There are a couple of Hogaks
What just happened here? How did the Bloodstained Maya get into the graveyard?
I think there was a fetch, right?
Can you rewind just a little bit?
That's not possible.
Okay.
We will check it later.
Yeah, because it looked like that card fell off the top of his library.
I didn't see that. That would have been. He discarded the previous two bar from with the Hymn to Turok, right? Wasn't it a...
He discarded Gristlebrand and Currency Converter.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately for this game, as you see, the life counter was still not fully visible at that time. Will be better later on.
So I think that they're figuring out what the life is at.
Yeah, I think the settings were a bit weird. This was at that time tracking experience counters, which made it...
Oh, we see a... That's interesting.
So there's an animate that seems to be a good line, but against Aminatou it isn't, since you can flicker permanents you own.
Yeah,
and thereby
it's still a draw 7. And it prevents Drazen from attacking for 1 turn.
Yeah, but the thing is that... Okay, at that point we have to add that the depletion land is untapped. He just forgot to untap it in the beginning. And there could have been a line now with which he would draw an interaction spell for the Dance of the Dead, Assassin's Trophy, Abrupt Decay, whatsoever, and a reanimation spell.
Yeah.
And the decision to go for that is absolutely correct. I would have done the same. Unfortunately, he was not able to find something.
What is the front card of his hand, right?
Pilfer.
Like right now.
Pilfer. This is 2 mana, Thoughtseize without losing life.
Uh-huh.
Then there's Meathook Massacre. Which cottage? Cut down, Stickfingers, and a couple of lands. So, unfortunately, he is down to 7. Otherwise, he could have drawn another 7 cards.
Yeah. So the drain from the collective brutality was definitely relevant here.
Yeah.
Is he casting Stickfingers? X's 2?
Yeah.
No, he just he's still got the mana floating, so he's...
Yeah, the reason why I think Pilfer is not worth it is that it simply discards, and there are many matchups right now that benefit from discarding cards. There are 2 CMC2 spells that exile Agonizing Remorse and Check for Traps, which is obviously way better to just get rid of the reanimation spells. And now Marcus gets back his target.
Finds a mana leak, a memory lapse.
And there is even another...
necromancy.
There's a necromancy.
He's played his land for turn, so... So yeah, I think he's just going to leave open the memory lapse, and that'll probably seal the deal here, because he can attack for lethal next turn.
Yeah. Exactly.
Is he considering balancing? No.
I'm not sure why he would do that.
He just passes here.
I think he's just thinking about... there's a DT.
Casting demonic?
Yeah. I think getting a Force of Negation or Force of Will is the very safe play here, because
I would be fine with memory lapse.
Was there a memory lapse in his hand?
Yeah, he has a memory lapse in his hand.
Okay, I didn't see that. Because if not, he could get around Mana Leak easily. I mean, there's 8 mana on board. It's quite a lot. And it pretty much comes down to Abrupt Decay at that point, I would say. Getting rid of the dance and then just activate the tomb.
Yeah.
Which is not going to happen.
Hard to interact with force. So
there's the Meathook Massacre. That's what he can go for. 2. And unfortunately he only minuses for 6. X equals 6 instead of 7 in order to get rid of the Grizzlebrand.
He plays a land, so 7. He gets rid of the Grizzlebrand. If he was to get rid of the Grizzlebrand.
Yeah. I mean, of course, he has to. And then Trezin comes back, but Marcus has another way of stealing Trezin at instant speed, which is not even necessary at that point.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a reason to concede, and they go to the second game, and that's a accelerated start by Stickfingers with a wild growth attached to a bayou. There's a godless shrine.
So he represents a misstep, which he doesn't have, which is great. Which is you should always do against a deck that doesn't pressure you'll have to at all.
Exactly. A mana type, you mean, right?
What did I say?
Misstep.
Oh yeah, mana type.
Yeah. Life is absolutely irrelevant.
And the ramp spells, we've already had a ramp spell, so this has the potential to be a fast Trazen line.
Exactly.
With a Lake of the Dead as well, so this could be the turn 3, I think. Oh,
no, it cannot. This one would have to be a swamp, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's one downside of Lake of the Dead is you have to have a lot of swamps to play. With Rain of Fill, he doesn't have enough black mana. Does Rain of Fill sack for colorless or black?
For black.
Okay, so he could have gone for it. Or he could be going for it, right?
It's quite risky.
One,
because
two,
with that hand, you would. I mean, your opponent represents a counter spell, so you would have to have. He has Reanimate and Goy's Vengeance in hand, and a Dance of the Dead, if I'm correct. So he's 1 mana short. Exactly 1 mana short to go off. Because you pay 1 black for the Rain of Filth activation.
Mm-hmm. Then you have 4 plus 3.
Like, yeah.
So
no. You need 5 for Stickfingers, and then you need another 3 to cast 2 reanimation spells.
That would be if the Stickfingers doesn't get counted, then yeah.
Oh, why would you ever counter the Stickfingers?
Never mind.
No. Yep. Unless there is a nightmare on board.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just okay. So this him is a really awkward draw here.
Yeah, it is indeed.
This is a cool. It's a cool hand, but it hasn't worked out so far.
It is. There are quite a lot of cards.
I think he just has to say go.
Yeah.
And it's so awkward because if he just the way that it's worked out now is that he wants a swamp, but if he plays a swamp, then he loses out on the City of Traders mana, so that he can play the lake.
But I think at that point with the Rain of Filth, it's not really needed anymore to go with the Lake of the Dead.
It's a Profane Tutor in his hand, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the currency converter just lets Marcus play so safe.
Yeah.
He can end of turn use as a Cult Epiphany, which I'm guessing he's gonna do.
Yeah.
Don't think he has a reanimation spell in hand. And I don't think he wants to be reanimating Ashiok. Yeah, exactly. Not Ashiok.
That's Elishnon, yeah.
So, notably, what he's done here is a slight mistake. We'll see if he misses it. But when you discard, when you have a Gallow Grave in your deck, which he does, you have to track your graveyard order. And when you use a discard spell, the cards that you discard with the spell are put into the graveyard while the spell is still on the stack, and then the spell leaves the stack, so the spell is above those cards in your graveyard. Very rarely relevant because both Shallow Grave and Corpse Dance are looking at creature order.
That's true, but still.
So something you can and should keep in mind when you're at a competitive rules enforcement level
Yep.
event.
Absolutely. There we see the latest animate dead DCI or Judge promo. I thought it was a rotting Regisaur.
Not quite.
Apparently
Very
it
close,
isn't.
though.
That's a very cool artwork. I love it a lot.
Yep. So he's reanimating his Tivit.
Yep, and that's a powerful one.
In this matchup, it's good, but it's not great. If he had something that maybe destroyed a permanent or gained control of a permanent, that would be great. Taking the opponent, taking the Bayou, or destroying the Bayou, taking him off. But I think this is...
Yeah, but it gives him so much mana, and also from an offensive standpoint, there are 5 power on the board already, adding another 6, and now there's an Aminatou cast to gain more treasures. Interesting decision from Valentin to give him even more treasures, as I would have tried. I mean, he doesn't know if he can go off that turn, but I would have tried, and now there's time. And that's again an awkward situation, because by the time he casts Rain of Filth, pretty sure he will... I mean, it's the same outcome. He can either tap City for 2 colorless and cast Rain of Filth, play the land, it enters the graveyard, and then adding ability from Rain of Filth to the new forest or the city, but not both lands.
Yeah.
But it's still 1 mana plus. That's what he needed to play this line a bit safer, and now he should be good.
Something that I kind of decided on in the last tournament is when you do play counterspells in this deck, I have a tendency to wait till like the last possible moment to do something that I have a kind of set line on, to give my opponent as little information as possible. But when you do play counter magic, and you have these 2 and like a potentially game-winning spell, doing something a bit earlier is sometimes the correct choice if you don't have anything. So like in this case, Marcus doesn't have anything and could have decided to... He plays Mental Misstep as far as I remember, and could have decided to sack the Hapless Researcher and activate the currency converter to get 2 cards deeper into his library.
Yep.
To look for interaction against the Rain of Filth. I don't know if he loses this match or not.
That's absolutely right. I mean, yeah, as early as possible, you have to, especially against a fast combo deck like this, you have to make sure to interrupt your opponent as much as possible. And I mean, he sees the current board state. It says, help me, I only have 1 black mana. I cannot go off in this turn if you counter my Rain of Filth. And that's already it. So that would have been the correct decision for sure. And now the judge corrects because he wants to sacrifice the forest, which has not the ability of Rain of Filth.
Rain of Filth is instant speed, right?
It is.
So he could have played it so that the Rain of Filth...
No.
so that he could...
No. City of Traitors is not a trigger. is it?
Yes, it is. Whenever you play a land, sacrifice it.
It's
So
as
it's a
it
triggered ability.
enters, I thought.
Nope. It's a triggered ability. You can respond to
Okay.
the trigger of City of Traders.
That
You can bounce a City of Traders with a bounce land. Instead of sacking it, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. It's a trigger. Yep, so there is the reanimation spell, and Marcus already has nothing against that, so they can simply go to the next one.
Did he end up activating the hapless researcher?
Yes, he did.
Okay, I just looked. Okay. Just looking online.
And Valentin played it the right way. He played reanimate first. In case Marcus has some interaction for the graveyard, he can react at instant speed with the Goyo's Vengeance.
Yep.
And again, as in the first or in the second round, he shocks himself just to represent some interaction. So we see Cling to Dust on his hand. That's not a bad card against Reanimator. There's also a Collective Brutality to get rid of... And now he has it. Ah. There's a Mana Type. I was just about to say, let's get rid of some reanimation spells. Not even sure Marcus has some. There's a Ponder. This looks fine. Unless he's searching for counter magic. Which would be... yeah, it seems. Why not? Somehow you have to handle that.
So yeah, this is another situation where sequencing is relevant. I'm getting better at the Aminatou deck. I don't think I'm as good as I could be yet, but there's definitely like a window there where you don't play the command tower and you play your ponder with just the Raffine's tower open. And for example, my list plays 2 temples. And if you shuffle with a ponder, hit a temple, and play the temple, you then have a tapped land.
Yep,
where
that's right. And you would also tap the Hallowed Fountain, but that's it's not relevant for the land, and it's also not really relevant to present either two instant speed black cards or one double black instant speed card, because that's rarely the case, but especially against this deck.
Yeah. So it isn't really relevant. It's just
it's a good habit.
They're good habits to get into.
Yep.
Even if in that specific situation it's not relevant, it also gives the opponent more to think about.
Yeah. True.
When you deliberate on how you tap your mana and you kind of make a show of it, you sometimes represent cards to your opponent that make them take worse lines because they think you're keeping 2 blue open or 2 black open or things like that, when in fact you aren't, but still show the opponent that you are, and then change their decision making, make it more difficult for them, and give them more room to make mistakes.
Yep. And now we see the Cling to Dust end of turn from Valentin, which is a fine decision. He sees the hand. There is only one card unknown. So far no counter magic, so he decides to go for the card draw instead. Marcus also has no way to get the Magister in graveyard, and that happened in the second round already, I guess, that he discarded 2 cards for Tainted Indulgence. Well, it's only 1.
Yep. Is this the situation where he
took it back? It was against you when he discarded 2.
No, I mean...
Or what are you talking about?
When you're talking about a situation in the finals where the City of Solitude taken back and it won him the game?
This will take some time, but yes.
Okay.
There will be an interesting decision later on, which was checked by the judge, and yeah, the judge said yes, if all parties are fine with that, he can do it. But I mean, I understand why he did that. On the other hand, I'm not sure. We have to check that. It will come. It will come up soon. I think this wasn't possible. Yeah, okay. I don't want to spoil it too much.
Okay.
So we see Tear Asunder. That's a Neuro card from Dominaria United. For 1 and a green, you can exile target artifact or enchantment. And if you kicker it, for 1 and another black, you can exile target non-land permanent instead. Which is quite a good spell in my opinion. You have to keep in mind there are a couple of permanent based abilities that deny you from going off with Trazin. Stuff like Pithing Needle, Unlicensed Hearse,
Rest in peace.
Rest in Peace. Exactly. Stuff like this. So you play, besides playing discard spells, you also play a few of these cards. I also played Wild. I like this card a lot. You can destroy artifacts and enchantments. If Valentin would have had access to Wild, he would have won that game. Because that was the relevant
I see what's
relevant interaction later on, because he searched for Assassin's Trophy. He didn't have anything else. And yeah, but I'm not going to go into detail on that one. I like both. Wild can be cycled against the matchups or whenever it's not needed. You don't always have to spend your mana on spells. Sometimes you have time to cycle the cards you don't need. So I liked it a lot. Something I was not a big fan of was Nihil Spellbomb. I bordered it against the mirror deck, the mirror matchup, and other graveyard decks, and it was never really relevant. More because I didn't play any mirror match or didn't face Dihada or Aminatou or something like that.
Yeah.
Could have been good.
Okay, so we see a Stickfingers cast with no mana open, right?
There's one polluted delta.
Oh, with one polluted delta.
Yep. This is also a fun fact. So he played, or still plays, maybe Boseiju, the original Boseiju, and the new Boseiju. And when I ordered the original Boseiju, I think I sent you the picture. This might be the only deck that will ever play both in Duel Commander.
Yeah.
But I ended up cutting it because you don't really have that, like, you have, I think, 3 reanimation spells you can cast with the ability of Boseiju, which are Exhume, Shallow Grave, and Goyo's Vengeance. And also it costs you life whenever you activate it. So this could have been any reanimation spell, just not reanimate, because there's no permanent attached. Otherwise Valentin could just go for Tear Asunder, get rid of the permanent, and get back Trezin. And he cannot tap his... he cannot play his Tears Under on Trezin, as it would exile it.
Yeah.
And now there's the situation that we have talked about earlier. So there is a city, the City of Solitude was bounced back to hand by Teferi. And Marcus is at 2 lands with a Force of Negation in hand. So he plays a Demonic Tutor, and the only interaction he has in order to get back Trezin into the graveyard is Assassin's Trophy. So while he was searching the library, he decided, oh, I made a mistake. Actually, I should have just reanimated, or I should have just not played the City of Solitude, because he wanted to go off in one single turn. He could have also just went for the trophy, get rid of Trezin, and wait another turn, because there is almost nothing Marcus can do about that situation.
Yeah. He could have also just animated. Oh, but he did. Yeah, he could have animated the Magister. Demonic Tutored for another reanimation spell.
That is correct, yeah. He could have also done that.
He had several lines. Yeah.
And that was a bit... It was a bit weird that he was asking to take it back, because he was already in the spot of resolving City of Solitude, which is like the best protection shield you can have against counter magic.
Yeah.
And Marcus can do absolutely nothing. He just has to wait one more turn. He took it back, and that's what I said. The judge was sitting aside and saying, yeah, you can do that if you like. If your opponent agrees, and Marcus will always agree to do that, because it gives him a better out. But on the other hand, you could also say, okay, you played your card, now you have to deal with that. And yeah, it's really just Assassin's Trophy, which unfortunately gives Marcus another island to cast his Force of Negation once Animate Dead goes on stack.
Could have just taken Dismember as well, couldn't he? Well, how big is Trezin?
4/6. It's not going to happen.
Oh, 4/6. Okay, never mind. I thought it was 4/3. No, that's Necroticus. Never mind.
That's true. Quite a grindy game. I mean, we're early in the round. It's like early in the game, like around 5. Turn 5. So there is a trophy.
We're far beyond turn 5, aren't we?
Okay, maybe I'm...
7 lands.
Yeah, true.
Sides.
True, I'm wrong. So there's Trezin, and Marcus is now looking at his hand like, okay, nice. I get another island. He already puts the reanimation spell on stack. Now that City of Solitude is not on the field, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And as you will see within the next minutes, the game will turn from that on.
The Trezin player still has outs. He can still reanimate twice.
There's no reanimation spell left in his hand. He only has City.
Oh wait,
and
Trezin.
Tears.
Oh yeah, Trezin's in the graveyard. Never mind.
Yep.
Can still draw a reanimate.
But there's a cool line included in his deck, which is that he plays Witch's Cottage. And luckily Marcus finds a counterspell here with the +1. Otherwise, Valentin is fetching for the cottage, putting back Trezin on top of his library, and just trying to hardcast Trezin. Which is quite a cool line, I have to say. But I felt He also plays Noxious Revival for the same reason, I think.
I think yes, Noxious Revival probably for a similar reason, but also buyback. There's a couple of spells you might want to buy back.
Yeah, of course. But then again, it's also cool. Like in granny matchups, you can put a land back on your opponent's library and stuff, and you can also get rid of reanimation targets and whatsoever. You can do a lot of shenanigans with the spell.
Yeah.
But it always, whenever you try to abuse it, it also requires you to have some stuff in the graveyard, and that's in a deck like this, which is very, very fast. It's quite a downside, to be honest.
Yeah. So another notable thing in the situation we were just in, if he was playing Cling in this tournament, he could have unmarked Graved for Cling.
Correct.
Yeah. And that would have sealed the deal.
Yep, that's true. It was pretty mad. And then I think now there's like the judge. Yeah, just saying here. This is not how you first need to resolve the spell. And then you can put the Frantic Surge into the graveyard last.
Yeah, so he pitched one card and then... And now he's thinking, put the Frantic Search on top, and now he's thinking about the second Frantic Search.
Which to me is an easy pick. I would have directly discarded Dam. You can't really use it, and...
I mean, it's a 3/3 pressuring Stickfingers. Stickfingers is pressuring him as a 3/3. The Aminatou, so he has to get rid of it at some point, but... Yeah.
At that point, I think I would have already searched for Unburial Rites, trying to get something on board.
Does he not have Unburial Rites in grave already? Was that not?
Is that the case? Then he should have already casted it. Maybe he's unaware of his graveyard. And there is a Runescar Demon, which brings up a DT. And before he even gets to search for something, Valentin says, "Yeah, finally there's a target for my Tears Thunder. Let's go." Otherwise, Marcus would start some shenanigans. And you should have a trauma from that, right? Getting DT'd 6 times.
Yeah. It was. I mean, the trauma in that game was the way that my hand developed. That's something that's very annoying about these Aminatou decks. Is you're relying on a lot of things to go right. You have a lot of, things have to go right, and there's a lot of opportunity for them to go right, but you can still, you can be stuck on, you can see 20 cards and be stuck on 2 lands, and you can not find a threat for... I had one game in Prague where I was 45 cards deep in my library, and the only reanimation target I had was a Tivit. So yeah, those things do happen. Much less than in like mid-range decks where you're basically just trying to hit your land drops, and that's it. You cast the spells from your hand and hope that everything goes right. And in these 1-card combo decks where you basically just have Stickfingers in your command zone and are trying to draw one of your 11 reanimates or however many there is. Yeah, not as much has to go right as in the Aminatou deck.
So I think there is no Unburial Rites in the graveyard, is there?
I thought I'd seen one, but there's probably a previous game.
Yeah. So he decides to go for the counterspell, drawing a card.
Yeah, so this is kind of weird. Graveyard reordering. It's a thing that...
What I don't understand... Okay, I mean, now we should be at a point at which he at which he tries to. So if he goes for a fetch right now, then he would have 5 cards in graveyard again. And yeah, I'm not really a fan of not casting City. I mean, you can also do that in the next turn.
I think he's not casting City in order to respond to a reanimation spell with Cling.
That's that's fair. So there's a lot of change, which will definitely change the way things are going here in this matchup right now. At the beginning, when I saw the search foil cards, I really thought, what the heck is that? But nowadays I really like it.
Yeah, I like it too, and I think it's. I thought it was going to be something like itch foils, where they are in one set and now they're in everything. That hasn't been the case yet.
It kind of reminds me of. I know back in the days when the From the Vault sets were released and people were like, "Wow, this looks like chewing gum. It's completely different." It was kind of fancy.
But most people hated it.
I know.
And I think this is similar in this case. And I think that's something cool where, we have the Galaxy foils and the Phyrexia foils, and we see them for maybe 1 or 2 sets, and people like them or people don't. But that's what makes Magic unique.
From our perspective, yes.
From our perspective.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where that has kind of remained true, is that all these pimp spells and everything, it's always optional.
Yeah, that's true.
Still, play non-foil cards that aren't that expensive. There are a few ones that are still expensive, but most of the standard sets have where the cheapest print of a card is usually not that expensive.
Mm.
So we see him flooding pretty hard here.
Yeah. I mean, the deck plays like 40-ish lands, something around that. But it's quite unlucky. On the other hand, until Marcus drew the Lord of Change, there wasn't really something coming up for him. But this game is going to an end. Sorry for already spoilering.
I don't think there's it. We see Marcus has a mental misstep, a force of will, a spell snare, and a mana leak. There's very little combinations of cards that he could draw that get him out of this.
That is true. And now there's the last row for Valentine. Otherwise, Marcus already represents lethal. He has a prismatic ending in order to get rid of the Stickfingers. And there's the final card from top, which is a swamp again. Would have taken a couple more turns to find something useful. Okay. Grindy match, interesting match. Let's see how the future of Stickfingers looks like. So far, we're going to rate that in our next breakdown session, I'd say.
Sure. Yes. Let's do that.
Okay. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye bye.